Chapter 20. We can't, Sean said again. Will you say this all afternoon? I asked him, until the sun falls away from us and the birds go back to their nests. He made a sound, but I didn't listen. First, we'll get the ropes. I said, then we'll go up on the cliff. I will never hold you, he said, putting his hands up to his face. But you could hold me. And how would you carry the eggs without breaking them? I tried to smile. He nodded. We'll tie the rope to my waist, then into the rocks. If we cover my hands with cloth, I'll manage somehow, Nory. He looked into my face. I will never let you fall. I know that, Sean read. He looked back at the door of his house, a quiet house without the sound of his mother's scolding. Was she lying in her bed as sick as Anna? I looked across the field. A small shape tottered toward me. I stood up. Patch! I'm coming, Nory, he called, coming to find you. My hand went to my mouth. What could I do with him? We can't take him, Sean said. I shook my head. There was no time to go back to Anna's, and there was only silence in Malin's house. We can't leave him. He'll fall. I ran my tongue over my dry lips. We'll lash him to a rock. We'll make sure he doesn't fall. Somehow we'll do that. He sighed. Yes, all right. He walked away from me, then going around the side of the house for his brother's fishing ropes, reaching for a cart to carry them, using his wrists rather than his hands. He leaned into the cart, pushing it with his body, and stopped at the end of the yard so I could find a place for Patch on top of the ropes, a place so small that his feet grazed the ground. I'll pull it, I said. The climb was almost a dream. The rocky road under my feet, the road rising, the wind was just a breath at first, and then it tore at my face. There was a blast of it as we reached the top. I am Maeve, I thought, remembering the day I had twirled over the rocks singing, with nothing to worry about, with Maggie still home and the potatoes growing green in the field. We sat near the well and rested, watching the birds soar over, screaming back and forth to each other. Then it was time. I stood up, bent because of the wind, shivering, listening to Patch crying, Cold, Nory, cold, cold. I went back and put my face against his, my arms around him. You will build great stone walls someday. I fluttered my eyelashes against his cheek, rubbed his back. Soon we will go back to Anna's. I will cook you an egg, 2 eggs, Patchine, with his blue stone eyes. I reached under him with my arms and tugged him out of the car to shove him again to uncoil the rope, using his arms, butting his head under it so it looped around his neck. It will be warmer back among the rocks, I told Patch, out of the wind. Patch shook his head. Not there. Someone had told him about the gray smoke men who lived in the rocks. I knew that. I put my hands on his cold little cheeks and tried to think of what I could tell him. And then I said in my loudest, fiercest voice, No gray smokeman will dare. No she, no banshee. I am Nory Ryan, and I come from Queen Maeve and Mam and Grenda and Da, and you, Patrick Ryan, are safe with me. And then I saw Sean red and stuck my chin out, so he'd know too that I meant what I said. I turned back to Patch. I'll take a bit of rope, twirl it around you. I tried to make it sound like a game. You'll be warm, Patchine. You'll dream of building a wall with blue stones. He was crying again, tears from the blue stone eyes. I kept moving with him, trying to find a space to wedge him in. The place where I found was almost a bowl, rocks curved up and around with just enough room for one wee man, I thought, or a small boy. But after I wedged him in, I knew there was no way to tie him. Too loose, and he'd slip out. Too tight, and he wouldn't be able to move. You have to stay here, Patchine. Stay still. Don't move. It's a place to fall. Will you stay? Sean was calling me now. Hurry! I could see the shadows falling across the cliffs. My legs ached and my arms. It was hard to think. Sleep, I told Patch. I'll be back. Back in a moment. Back in a while. I slipped down off the rocks onto the bare ground of the cliff where Sean was waiting, the rope curled around his shoulder. Listen, Nory, he said. You have to turn into the rope as the wind spins you. Test each rock with your foot before you rest on it. You have to be quiet, be quick, and watch your face, your eyes. The birds will fight to save their nests. I put up my hand. I didn't want to hear any more. There's a ledge, he said. I don't know how far down, but we've seen it from the shore. There are chinks and cracks and messy nests. With eggs, I said, reaching for his cap. I'll fill this, you'll see. But we have to hurry. My lips chattered. Patchine will be up. I'll watch him, he said. But I knew he'd be holding the rope, watching me. If Patch wandered onto the edge... Stop, I told myself. And in my mind, Celia. I couldn't think about that. Instead, I think of the eggs round and warm in my hands. I think of opening them, one for me and one for Patch. Think of spooning a warm egg soup into Anna's mouth. Think of Sean. Sean kept talking as we sat ourselves on the ground and wound the rope around our waists, wound ourselves together. His face tightened as the rope touched his hands. It was beginning to rain, a soft slanting rain that went through my shawl. We stood up and danced away from each other, pulling on the rope at our waist to be sure it was tight. I pointed. I'll go down that way. A brave child like my son, Anna had said. Please let me be brave. Don't face the sea, face the rocks, Sean said. Don't look down. I watched him wedge himself in, his feet up, his hands wrapped in a cloth holding the rope. I'll hold my own weight, I said, you know that. I didn't say what we were both thinking. If I lost my footing and fell, he'd have to depend on the strength of his body and the rocks to keep me from going into the sea. He'd never be able to use his hands. If you're in trouble, he said, the rope will tighten against me. Otherwise it will be slow and steady, and you will give a good tug on it once in a while, so I know you are still alive. I tried to grin at him, bringing you an egg for your breakfast. 2 eggs. He tried to smile. There's a hole in my stomach where there should be food. I touched his hand, made the sign of the cross over myself, and took a step, and another, and turned my back away from the sea, and lowered myself down, 1 rock at a time, feeling with my toes, testing each rock as Sean had said, making sure it would hold me, and rested, catching my breath, leaning my head against a slab of rock, my feet on a wide flag, and listened with my eyes closed to the sound of the wind and the surf and the spray crashing against the cliff below. Don't look at the sea. But I had to look over my shoulder, a quick look, the quickest look. The clouds drifted across the sea and away again, making patterns of light on the water in the distance, and suddenly the sound of what I was hearing, the whistle of the wind across the cliffs, the booming of the surf, was music. And at that moment I felt like Queen Maeve. I felt Sean tugging at the rope. He must have wondered why I had stopped. I tugged back with my free hand to let him know I was all right. From there, it was not as hard. I made music in my own mind to go with the music of the cliffs, and my hands held each rock above and my feet in the right places one after another, until I reached down and there was no rock under me. I circled the air with my leg, toes pointed, searching for something, a rock, a ledge. Suddenly there was a screaming in my ears and a great flapping of wings against my head and in my hair. Claws raked my forehead, opening a cut. Blood ran over my eye and down my cheek, and I screamed with the same sound as the bird. Without thinking, I let go of the rock to beat it away. I dropped, one hand still holding the bird's legs, feeling the dizziness as the sea below tilted and moved up towards me, and with a sickening crunch, I landed on the ledge. The screeching of the bird stopped, and I saw that it was dead under me. I moved as far away from it as I could on the ledge, so far that my back was up against the wall of rock. I could feel Sean pulling on the rope. I tugged again and lay there thinking I'd never get up, never get away from the bird. I saw the nests above me, within my reach, and got up on my knees, shouting, waving my arms to be sure there wasn't a bird on a nest that would startle me to falling again. The birds wheeled above me, screeching, their powerful wings flapping. I took the eggs quickly, searching out the largest ones, putting them carefully in Sean's cap, nesting them in the bits of grass to be sure they wouldn't break. I left an egg in each nest. And then I was finished. There was more to eat in that cap than we'd had in days. I pictured the eggs bubbling gently in the boiling water, tried to think how long they'd last, because I'd have to do this again and again, until Doc came back, or Celia and Granda. I crawled back along the ledge, trying not to look at the poor dead bird, its feathers blowing in the wind. The bird. What would Celia think of me if I left it there? A giant of a bird, more than one meal. I reached out and touched it. Foo-far. And then I tied it to my waist and began to climb back up the cliff.